In this video we're going to talk about Porter's 5 forces model. Now here we're going to look at industry, and we're going to look at rivalry within an industry, and we're going to look at all the forces that impinge on the participants in the industry. So to start, in economics terms, an industry is a group of companies that produce and market products that are close substitutes for each other. That's what we mean by an industry. A group of companies that produce and market products that are close substitutes. They're very similar. The products are very similar to each other. They're close substitutes, and that means that the producers have to, in a sense, outmaneuver each other in the marketplace to try and get sales. They have to be very active and very aware of customer requirements so as to get sales. And really they're looking for ways in which to differentiate their products all the time so as to get an advantage over their competitors. Some industries are more profitable than others. This could be due to the competitive structure of the particular industry. For example, it could be that the industry is producing a product which is very innovative and very attractive to the customers, which will mean high profits within that industry. It could be that the existing producers within the industry are very innovative and are changing their products, and customers like to be associated with that type of product, again leading to high profits. The problem with high profitability, and it may sound a strange thing to say that there is a problem with high profitability, but high profitability can encourage new participants into the market, as we'll see in a moment. And that's an issue that needs to be addressed by the existing producers in the market. Now, Porter's 5 forces examines the nature of competition within an industry. It looks at 5 forces. It looks at the forces that are in play within an industry and picks out what Michael Porter considered to be the 5 most important, and concentrates on policies and issues associated with those 5 forces, and how rivals within an industry can understand what's going on in the industry with reference to these 5 forces. So let's start by looking at it in a bit more schematic format. Well, we have competitive rivalry. We have a number of producers and they're in competition, which gives us competitive rivalry. And the first force would be the potential entrants that come into the market or may come into the market. If the market is highly profitable, then other companies from outside of this area completely, will start looking at the industry and start to consider how to join the industry so as they too can share in these considerable profits. Of course, what the existing companies need is some way of stopping that entry. They don't want to share their profits with yet more companies. So they need to have some way of blocking the entrance. We'll talk about this later in the slides to come. Another force is the bargaining power of the buyers. The buyers are the presumably the consumers. Well, the consumers nowadays are extremely sophisticated, and they have access to a lot of information about the products and about the markets and about issues associated with markets. So the buyers are able to work out where the best deals are to be had. So in a sense, the buyers may vote with their feet. They may move to another shopping area to buy the product, or they may buy it online, and it may come from a different country. So the buyers have become more sophisticated over time. There's also the issue of substitutes and the possibility of substitute goods coming on the market. So there's a threat of substitute goods coming on the market. Customers are constantly looking for modern products, modern designs, innovative products, and ones which of course represent good value for money. But they are looking to find substitutes for the existing products, and to that end the producers in the market must be aware that it's not just like potential entrants coming in to produce very similar products. There may be alternatives, substitutes, which can come on the market, which can also eat in to the profitability of the industry. Suppliers are also an issue, because the suppliers have bargaining power. The suppliers could be the suppliers of raw materials or of components, or it could be the suppliers of the finished good going into the market itself. But suppliers have bargaining power insofar as they have assets and they have investments that they wish to preserve and wish to defend, and they're also supplying products that are needed by producers down the supply chain, and they are going to try and get the best deal in exchange for those products, and they will be working out tactics and ways to enable them to achieve the best. So these are just general comments about Porter's 5 forces framework, which is what we've got on the screen at the moment. What I want to do for the rest of this video is to talk about each of these. We have competitive rivalry, that's a force, and then we have the other 4 forces impinging upon that as well. And I want to talk about each of these and elaborate on what's going on and what are the issues associated with each of them. These are forces that are real and are in play. They are going on in a sense that they can be detected within actual industries, and industrialists and business people in all sectors must be aware of these various forces and have some sort of idea of how to manage them and deal with them. But let's start by just looking at the first one, which was the threat of entry. Now, the threat of entry mainly depends on barriers to entry. Now, these are factors that need to be overcome by potential entrants in order to compete successfully. So companies need to have some sort of barrier to entry. They must have some way of protecting themselves from entry. If they don't, then other companies are going to enter the market and, in a sense, steal their customers. I don't mean that in any bad sense of the word. I don't mean they're going to steal them in that sense, but steal them in the sense that they're going to take them easily. That a company has established the market, it has worked out what the customers want, it's making a product that the customers like, and the other company can see this and can come in and, in a sense, get access to those customers cheaply because they know the design that is successful. Now, the company that's already there, and the company that's there at the start, they need to protect themselves by having some barriers to entry. Now, barriers to entry could be something like as follows. There could be economies due to size, economies of scale we call them, and this means that larger companies may have advantages over smaller companies by virtue of their size. For example, they could have specialist machinery. Large companies can afford to have specialist machinery that enable them to produce more cheaply. But they can also get cheaper loans at the bank. They're big companies. Banks like to deal with big companies. There's less risk for the bank. So they're able to get cheaper loans, by and large, than new entrants. And they'll have a skilled workforce, a workforce that knows the product, knows the technology, knows the machinery, knows the processes, has an established work routine. They're a skilled workforce that has built this up perhaps over a considerable period of time, and that would be a barrier to new entrants entering the market also. The new entrants would have to train their workforce and acculturate their workforce, get them used to this way of working and get them used to the new technology and the machines and so on. There's also the problem of the initial capital investment which is required for entry. Sometimes companies know that other companies are making what economists would call abnormal profits. It means a lot of profit, enough to encourage new companies to try and set up in that market. But they can't set up because the existing companies are so big, and they have to be that big in order to produce. A simple example. I know that the ethical pharmaceutical industry is making a lot of profit, but I cannot compete against them because I do not have the resources to set up a multinational corporation with research and development facility, with the expertise that they have got and so on. So we may know that there are abnormal profits in some sectors, in some industries, but the investment necessary to get involved in that sector would be phenomenal and would be prohibitive. It would stop new entrants from coming in. That's an extreme example, I know, but it could be that in a less extreme sense, some industries simply have a lot of capital investment that's required up front, a lot of training, a lot of design work, a lot of initial costs, and that may put off potential entrants. The potential entrants would also have to have access to supply and distribution channels, and suppliers may be reticent about supplying new entrants because they don't want to alienate their existing customers. So they may have problems in getting supplies to make this product. And also the distribution channels may not want to alienate their existing customers either. So distribution channels may refuse to stock the product when it's produced, or may not want to stock it on cheaper terms. So there are issues that entrants have to face in the context of supply and distribution channels. There are also marketing barriers. The company will have built up good relationships with customers and suppliers. The company will simply know customers and suppliers. They'll know what they're like, they know what they want, they understand customer requirements, they've got an expertise in dealing with the customers, and that also gives them an advantage. And they only have this by virtue of the fact that they have been operating in the business. And they've got simply years of experience within the industry. They have been established within the industry for years. They know the industry, they know the customers' requirements, they know the technicalities of production, the requirements for raw materials and training, and they've got great experience of running this industry. So that acts as a powerful barrier to entry for new entrants. There's also an issue related to government requirements and legislation. For example, the existing companies in the market may have patents, or patents as sometimes called, or copyrights. They may have taken out legal protection for the product. and they may be granted this protection. They may be granted exclusive right to produce that product for a number of years. And that will automatically block anyone else from trying to set up. And there are also what we call here restricted goods. Companies may be in production and making considerable profits, but other companies are not allowed to participate because the products that are produced are deemed to be, let's say, dangerous. The company is producing under license for the government, so it's producing weapons or explosives or something dangerous. So it's felt that the government needs to control that particular production. So only some companies will be registered to produce those items. So it's a barrier to entry as far as we're concerned. The reason for it is it's a legal requirement. It's a legal barrier to entry. Now the next one is substitutes and the threat of substitutes. Well, reduces demand of a particular product as customers may perceive an alternative product to be more attractive. So if there's an existing product in the market and one that has the same functionality essentially but has extra features, or it's got a nicer design, a more modern design, or perhaps it's just cheaper, this will eat in to the profits within the industry. Substitution may take different forms. It could be product for product. It could be that producers outside of the industry just target one product within the industry and try to produce a product that will go into competition with the one in the industry. It's one for one. It's product for product. So they look at a product within the industry and they make one that does similar or exactly the same thing and tries to get that substituted in the market. Or there could be generic substitution, where companies target all the products within the industry and tries to target the idea of the various products, perhaps not the various versions of the product, but the idea, and tries to produce its own line of products which does very similar things. So substitution could take different forms. Now buyers. Well, buyers create demand in an industry and are the ones that influence the profit potential in that industry. Without buyers, there is no industry. The buyers are necessary to purchase the products and create the demand and so on. Now, buyer power depends on concentrations of buyers. The more buyers there are, the greater the demand. But the buyers may also subscribe to, let's say, electronic forums which discuss the products, and they're able to, through the power of the forum, perhaps be able to negotiate discounts from members of the forum, and so they're concentrating. The buyers are coming together and acting like one, and are able to squeeze concessions out of the producers. Now, there's also the cost of switching suppliers. So if it's significant cost in switching suppliers, then the buyers will stay with the ones they've got. There's an inertia amongst the buyers. They'll stay with the ones they've got rather than going to the problem of switching. So they'll only switch if it's convenient. They'll only switch from one product to another if it's convenient to do so. Supply is being obtained by the buyers. Well, sometimes the buyers are able to buy from outside of a given industry. They may be able to buy nowadays from overseas through the internet. and that will influence their power. If they're buying from overseas, then the domestic industry will experience falling profits and will ultimately have to cut its price and so on. So buyer power could depend on any of these issues. Suppliers. Well, suppliers can also play an important role in the industry. Suppliers aim to provide materials and relevant products into the industry. So the suppliers may supply, for example, raw materials or components. The cost of goods purchased from suppliers can have an impact on a company's profit potential. Clearly, the cost of goods will have to be fed in to the overall costs of the business. And the overall cost of the business, if those are high, the chances are the price charged to the final purchaser will also be high. Now, suppliers. Well, supplier power is high when there are many buyers and a limited number of suppliers. In that case, the suppliers will be in a powerful position. There are many buyers and only few suppliers, so suppliers will be in a powerful position. It's also the case when it would be more costly to switch suppliers. If it's costly to switch suppliers, then supplier power will also be high. That means once the suppliers have got it, their customers tend to be stuck. They tend to be fixed around those. To some small extent, you could see this playing out in the context of the home computing market. There are PCs, there are Linux machines, and there are Apple machines. And they have different ways of being used. They have different sets of commands, and they have different keystrokes for different things, and so on. And once someone becomes familiar with one of them, it's difficult to change. So they tend to get locked in. It's costly to switch. Perhaps it's costly in terms of time, in terms of effort. They have to learn a new system and so on. So customers may get locked in. There's also this idea of forward integration, and I'll give you a little chart to show very briefly how this could work. Let's say, for example, we have 3 suppliers. I've colored them differently, so different colors here, 3 different suppliers, just to keep it very simple. Real situations there will be many suppliers perhaps, but let's just, for argument's sake, 3. Now, let's say the first supplier here, the blue one, opens an outlet to sell the finished product. So it opens an outlet and it sells on from the outlet to the final customers. So we can see the direction of the goods coming from the suppliers, or one of the suppliers, in this case the blue one, going to outlets, which goes to the customers. Now the other 2 supply a different outlet, and that outlet supplies on to the final customers. But you see, the 2 on the bottom, those have to give a markup to the outlet. The blue one on the top doesn't have to give that markup to the outlet. So that markup may be used to finance the outlet, but it gives the supplier more control over the product from start to finish. The 2 on the bottom, both of those have to feed into outlets, into a particular outlet, and then hope that the outlet will promote their product to the final consumer. So there could be an idea associated with what's called forward integration, moving closer to the final consumer. That's what we mean by forward integration. Now, rivalry. Well, competitive rivalry occurs when there are a number of organizations producing or providing similar products or services in an industry. That's what we mean by competitive rivalry. There's a number of organizations all supplying similar products or services. Rivalry in an industry depends on relative power of the competitors. So some competitors might be very efficient and they're able to out-compete the others. So they will become the leaders within the industry. Some of them might be large and very efficient. These are low-cost producers, and they could become the market leaders. Other ones are not necessarily low-cost or not necessarily big, dominant firms. They could just be a very good predictor of the market and changes in the market. They're just very alert to market requirements. These are known as barometric firms because they're like barometers. They're able to read the market situation very accurately, and therefore the others tend to follow barometric firms because they've got a good history in predicting the market. But rivalry can also depend on industry growth rates. If the industry is growing fast, then there might be less rivalry amongst the existing producers because it's less intense. The market is growing, so they're satisfied. They're getting sales because the market is growing. There could be high fixed costs. If there are high fixed costs for the producers, there's a need for high sales for the contribution to the overheads. The more they sell, the more contribution they get to the overheads, and if there are high fixed costs, there are high overheads. So they need to have a lot of sales, in which case rivalry will be intense. They're fighting for sales because they've got high fixed overheads. Also, exit barriers. High exit barriers. More rivalry as competitors fight to leave the industry. So high exit barriers sometimes means that companies have a lot of stock and they want to dispose of the stock. But how do they dispose of it? They want to leave the industry, they need to dispose of the stock, so they start to sell it off cheaply, causing the other companies to reduce their prices, and this can become very messy, very complex, and very, very nasty amongst them. But there could be high exit barriers. And differentiation, trying to make the products different, which will give the companies a little taste of monopoly power because their products are slightly different to the competitors. Well, the more different they are, the smaller the amount of rivalry between them. There are less rivals because their products are becoming more unique. They're differentiating their products. So in this video we've talked about Porter's 5 forces, we've talked about rivalry and barriers to entry and so on and so on. So we've got a view of the complexity that producers within an industry have to face in order to do battle with their rivals, and looking at the forces that are operating on them and the way in which they could analyze those forces and perhaps respond to the forces. But that's all we're going to deal with in this video. This completes our talk on Porter's 5 forces. This is just an overview video. There are more sophisticated videos on this topic available elsewhere in the course. But that's all we're going to deal with here, so let's leave it at that and say thank you for watching.